his street. It is like terrible. I mean, he probably can't even, there's so many potholes where Dan lives. So he probably didn't want to take that fancy car out on the road. Yeah. Far away.
It's 6:30. We're gonna, we do not have a quorum right now. We are going to continue the meeting because there is nothing on the agenda for which we need to vote on. Dan may show up, but John is in a meeting at Garfield Township, and Carl had a conflict as well. So we will move forward with tonight's agenda. We have Pledge Allegiance on the agenda, so we'll go do that. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Judy, are you taking a roll? Or
I
is
think
Claire?
I am. Am I taking notes too?
There will be no action items,
Okay, so then just regular notes.
so it'll be just pretty simple minutes.
Yeah, and we are recording, so I can go back. All right, yes, I am. Okay, ready? Walters.
Present.
Gonzalez. Nemitz, yes. Syke, absent and excused. Leonard, absent and excused. And Ferguson, absent and excused.
Thank you, Judy.
You're welcome.
Gonna review, does anybody have a conflict of interest for anything on tonight's agenda that we should be aware of? Okay. I will entertain a motion. Well, can we even approve the agenda without a,
I think you don't need to do a formal action
Okay.
on approving the agenda.
all right, since there isn't a quorum, we're gonna skip number 4.
Can I just say one thing? I think I had fat fingers, so there's a couple typos, so can we, does someone mind changing them, fix those before, or you want me to do it?
Yep, you can.
Fix 'em.
Let us know now, or let me know before the next meeting, and we'll just adopt in the minutes of the September meeting.
Okay, just a second here, real quick, if we could, do you mind?
That's fine.
Okay, right in I hit 2 Ps, do you see that? It says
Yeah.
it's supposed to be Woodgate and then Ridge. I think, do you see any others? That's like a big one, I'm sorry, you guys. I think I was like, anything else?
Yeah,
that-
my name is Gonzalez.
You know what, it's my stupid,
I'll check.
yeah. Gonzalez.
Yes.
I know, I'm sorry, I'll try to fix it in spell check. I apologize again. Gee. Okay, anything else? I apologize, Paul. All right, thank you.
So
Yep.
you get that to Claire and/or Leslie.
Yep, will do, thank you.
At this point in the agenda, we'll take public comment for anything that is not on tonight's agenda. If you come to the lectern, state your name, address. All right, I don't see anybody. I'll close the public comment. Correspondence, Claire, would you like to give us a brief rundown of what we have in our packet?
Sure, you'll see a few items in your packet. There's a risk management training. We're excited about this. It's, we got 2 grants, one from the PAR plan. It's a risk reduction through MTA for insurance for townships, and then in partnership with a grant from the MTA chapter for Grand Traverse County. So we're going to be offering a training for all local elected officials, ZBA members, planning commissioners, and opening it up to all boards and commissions in Grand Traverse County. And so the focus of the training is really on what you can do as a board or commission to mitigate your risk, kind of focused on legal risk. So We're going to be talking a lot about findings of fact and proper procedures, Open Meetings Act, all the kind of nuts and bolts of risk management. And we have a really great trainer, so we're excited to offer that training, and it's free of cost to anyone that wants to attend. So there's a flyer in your packet for that. There's also a memo that Beth and Chuck Korn had asked staff at East Bay and Garfield Township to put together a memo kind of highlighting some existing zoning and planning along the Hammond corridor and some opportunities for coordination and some recommended next steps. So you'll see there's that memo in your packet, and both Garfield Township as well as East Bay are in the process of updating master plan. Garfield's going to be starting soon, and so I think we're going to be planning to hold a joint session between the two planning commissions for some coordination and building off of this memo. And then the last item in correspondence is staff went ahead and completed the Housing Ready checklist. This is something that Housing North has, and so we presented this to the Board of Trustees a few weeks ago. They had a presentation from Housing North. They adopted a resolution of support for the Homes for Our Future campaign, but I thought that the Housing Ready checklist was really helpful because it goes through a lot of actions proactive things that the township can be doing from a zoning and policy standpoint to be more proactive about workforce housing. So you'll see that there's a lot of tools and ideas for zoning, and so we'll be looking at that throughout the master plan update and as we update our zoning ordinance.
Can I ask you a question about that?
Sure.
You had an item on, under the zoning strategies, item number 6. It was not indicated either yes or no. The item is definitions that distinguish between long-term rental and short-term rental. I take it we don't have something.
What page are you on?
I'm on page 24 of 60.
We do distinguish between long-term and short-term rental. We differentiate them based on the 30 days. So I should have put yes.
Probably yes,
Yeah.
okay.
Thank you.
Anything else for Claire? I have a question, Claire, for the training. Is there going to be a live feed going on as well?
I think, we've got this flyer complete, but I'm waiting to send it out to all the other communities just because I want to talk with Beth just about any changes to COVID. And so I think we probably will have an overflow room. Leah's going to be taping it for us. We'll probably do the overflow room and have an opportunity at least for people to attend in person both, and we'll either have a live feed or have it taped for the future.
Okay, perfect. It's recorded, because then we can go back and watch it if we need to as well.
But there's pizza if you come in person, so.
Where, when, to the risk management? To the risk management, there's pizza? Oh, my gosh. That's enticing.
It doesn't say that on the flyer.
I'm updating the flyer. I updated the
Oh.
flyer.
I think you just need some pictures of
I was
pizza.
able to confirm pizza. The flyer was up.
Oh, that's funny.
Okay. Next on the agenda is unfinished business, for which we have none for tonight. And number 8 is new business, the focus group final report. And Claire, take it away.
Well, we've got Elise Crafts here, and so Elise facilitated the focus groups that we went through. So there was 5 focus groups. She put together a final report that's in your packet, and so she's here to just go through a short presentation of some of the themes that we heard. And I think it's perfect timing, because I think it feeds in nicely to the action plan that we've been working on. Is that gonna wake up? I can take the remote.
You wake this up and I'll turn lights off? Do you want lights off, or is this good, do you think?
Probably the lights, yeah, probably lights off.
Is that a switch over here, Lindsay?
I think they're over there.
Here I go, like that?
There you go.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe.
Thanks, Claire, for the introduction, and nice to see all of you again. I know that all of you participated in at least one or more of these focus groups, so thanks for the opportunity just to share the results we heard from the community, and hopefully this helps inform your next discussion tonight. So I'm just going to offer kind of a high-level, one second, I want to turn, oh, you're good, you can't see that. I have a prompt to give subtitles a try, but I'm going to ignore that. So I'm just going to offer a high-level overview of what we heard, and I'll start with just a reminder of the topics that we focused on. So we talked with the community around families with children, transportation, business, natural resources, and senior citizens in East Bay Township. And tonight I'll talk about the high-level themes, what's working well, what folks perceive as not working well, and then we'll dig into specific solutions and ideas that were proposed that we grouped by theme. So that's how we'll conclude the presentation. So as you can see, high-level themes, the TART system is widely used and appreciated, and additional non-motorized infrastructure is desired. There was a real appreciation for what exists and a real appreciation for additional connections where possible. Traffic speed and flow throughout the township is a concern, and areas that were specifically identified included near schools, congestion in parks, and then on the US 31 corridor between 3 Mile and 4 Mile. The East Bay Township's mix of urban and rural amenities was a real plus for folks and was a reason that many of our participants identified that as the main reason for why they live here. So they loved that they're close to Traverse City and kind of the urban feel, but are also in a township where there's a ton of natural resources, open space, beautiful views, and lots of recreation opportunities. So there was this nice balance of close to amenities, but having a very rural, spaced out feel. And then new development and land use regulations that inform new development should protect and enhance those natural resources that folks so enjoy in the township. And then finally, the intersections got a lot of attention, not only in the transportation focus group, but also in the other sessions. And safety, design, and then land uses surrounding those intersections were a high priority as a conversation to have in the township. And folks were specifically looking for safe pedestrian crossings, community amenities, and then active businesses in those particular nodes. Any questions or surprising themes as you look at that list?
Only that the speed of the traffic is extended more than between 3 and 4 miles, from 3 Mile down to airport access, too. It's sort of like the Autobahn.
I think the word Autobahn was provided at least once in our conversation. So yeah, Paul, that's consistent with what we heard. I really want to get rid of this. I'm going to turn on subtitles just to get rid of this. No, I'm not. Okay. Thanks for working with me as I work through tech issues. So this was kind of the broad strokes of what's working well in the township. So families and non-families identified amenities, including the library, grocery stores, and local businesses as something that they felt really supported by in East Bay Township. Pedestrian infrastructure, natural resources, like we discussed, specifically called out the township support for businesses during the COVID-19 pandemic. So I know Claire was instrumental in pushing out communications around what resources were available as different federal and state programs became available to support businesses over the last year. Parks and recreation opportunities. 2 ordinances were mentioned as working well, the Forest Lakes Overlay District regulations and then the Tree Protection Ordinance in development. Community engagement, so folks were grateful for the opportunity to engage as part of this focus groups process, but also to engage as they had previously. And then the township character, and I think that got back to that kind of nice mix of rural and urban, and folks specifically called out family-owned businesses in the township, and food trucks is something that they found exciting in East Bay. So then, not working well, and I think you'll see here that this list includes many of the same topics. So you have an engaged citizenry that is so excited about pedestrian and bike crossings, for example, and then also so excited to see those improved and added throughout the township. So additional safe pedestrian and bike crossings were something that folks identified as a real need. Where we can, there's limited enforcement of high vehicle speeds folks perceived in the township, that road and intersection speed and flow, the aesthetics of the US 31 corridor, lack of affordable childcare. This is one that we know is a crisis throughout the country, so that's not necessarily surprising. Reactive versus proactive ordinances and guidelines. So folks shared that they felt in certain circumstances the township was playing catch-up as opposed to being in front of issues that are occurring with new development or existing development. And then enforcement of existing ordinances, as well as gaps in the regulations protecting trees, wetlands, and groundwater. So these were the perceived concerns, the perceived not working as well as we'd hoped to in East Bay Township. Anything stand out to you in this list? Anything surprise you or that you have questions on? Okay. So next, we're going to look at ideas and solutions. And again, we grouped these, though I didn't take these from each focus group, we grouped them based on theme. So we're going to start with transportation, and these ideas and solutions didn't just come out of the transportation focus group. Many of these were also identified by the families with children, for example, who participated in that session. So create new pedestrian connections wherever possible, but specifically including trails, crosswalks, sidewalks, and bike lanes throughout the township. Improve existing crossings and intersections for pedestrians. Work with partners to reduce speeds on major roads and near schools. And then as you're thinking about pedestrian infrastructure, specifically think about that as you're looking at new developments. And I know this is something that you've been doing at the Planning Commission level. And look for connections that prioritize neighborhood connectivity and also intersection safety. There was a desire to support additional beta routes within the township and also to promote the existing Bayline beta route that runs in East Bay. Any questions about this list? So then, related to parks and recreation, encouraging park development near neighborhoods, increasing community gathering amenities in parks. So there was a discussion, this came out of the Families with Children focus group, where folks were identifying that there's perhaps more that could be done in parks to make these more active community gathering spaces. And there was opportunity to kind of create a community hub sort of feel with different infrastructure that would encourage gathering and events and that kind of thing. Particularly that was identified for parks that are near sort of your urban centers in the more urban portions of your township. And then creating additional access points for canoers and kayakers, not only to East Bay, but also to your inland lakes and streams. Anything surprise you or that you want to ask a question about or discuss on this list? Okay. Next, we'll move to housing and development. So this is a goal or an action that you'll see in most every community's master plan, but folks definitely identified the need for housing for all income levels. So where you can, supporting development and redevelopment that provides those different mix of housing types. And I think this is something also that you're already doing and talking about as you look at new development, and folks definitely said, keep doing that. Ensuring transparency in your development review process, so making sure that that process is communicated clearly to your citizens and is easy to understand and follow as best you can. Target new development to maximize the urban connections that exist in the township while minimizing and protecting your rural resource impacts. So focusing development where there's already urban infrastructure and minimizing that sprawl into your pristine rural areas that folks so cherish here. And then allow for tiny homes in the new master plan. So very specific.
That's surprising.
So then zoning and design. Well, any questions first on housing and development? Paul, you mentioned that tiny homes surprised you?
Yeah, I didn't see that when I was looking at the details.
I bet they would be second homes and not first homes. Was there any discussion regarding if that is going to be a primary residence or a secondary residence?
Great question, Judy. Not that I
Yeah.
recall.
Yeah.
I think that came up when we were talking about housing for all income levels, and there's been this sort of shift towards thinking about if we can reduce the size of homes, we can reduce the price point of homes. So I think the discussion was sort of centered more about reducing price point, which would imply to me that we're looking for more of that traditional year-round
Okay.
buyer, but that wasn't specifically stated.
Then is it tiny homes or smaller homes?
Tiny homes was what it was in my notes, so, but you know, that's sort of
This
like.
is a big difference.
Yeah, and that's sort of probably like affordable housing, right? Where we throw around these words that maybe mean one very specific thing, but actually we just mean workforce housing, or maybe tiny homes just mean smaller homes. If this is one that confuses you or you have questions around, it'd be a good topic maybe to engage with the community further and have a specific, have some questions around that if your planner, thinks that's a good move.
I have one thought on that. We've had a lot of interest in having more creative housing solutions and designs, and they're not meeting the minimum square feet. So we require 760 square feet for homes. And so we do have some developers that are looking to put in some different housing formats that are less than that.
Well,
So that was part of the
760,
reason.
but tiny homes can go as low as like 150.
Right, so one of the recommended, and we'll get into this action plan more, but it was one of the recommended actions for housing would be to update zoning to allow smaller housing units and more flexibility in housing styles to meet, growing demand. So I
Well-
think that there's some flexibility and maybe even removing that minimum size requirement and having other, standards for review meeting.
What about that sub-plan area that we did a few years ago? Is that not meeting the need?
It's been a challenging design because it requires a courtyard. Some of the design elements of it, it requires a courtyard in the center. And so a few different developers that have been interested in smaller homes are not able to meet that kind of very specific design requirements in our ordinance. And so they've looked to do PUDs as opposed to the pocket neighborhood.
That's what it's called.
So like if 760 square feet and and I'm probably off on this, but the average is somewhere between 300, 325 a square foot. So puts the house in at 228,000, which is kind of our median, I think, price range right now, according to the census or the realtor thing in the paper. So that doesn't really meet it doesn't meet the people who need even 760 square feet, and that's pretty small. That's pretty expensive right now, hopefully.
Yeah, I think the median, the homes that are selling are quite a bit more than that.
Yeah, right. I know. I think the paper takes in like all of like Grand Traverse County, from all different areas, so they're more than that now too, but
Yeah.
that's pretty expensive, for 760 square
Yeah,
feet.
when I'm looking at the housing options, the responses here, I don't even see tiny homes mentioned. Page 48 of 60.
We had it in the survey and then we removed it to just have something more flexible about a smaller housing option.
Yeah, and that was 6%. Well,
There, so, I'm good, it came back up. Never mind.
but anyway,
Anyway, that's an
not to get
interesting
hung
thing.
up on that, but it's just something that's jumped
Well,
out at me.
good to flag as you move towards next steps. So if you get to the point where you're supporting a zoning ordinance change to allow for a smaller home size, you'll obviously have opportunity to engage with the public at that time and get a better direction, right, on what do you mean by tiny home and where should we go from here? So it's a good one to flag for. It's helpful tonight, I think, for you to kind of say, okay, these are making sense, but here's one that we're going to want more information on before we move forward. So thanks for the good discussion. Anything else to talk about on this list? Okay, next we'll move to zoning and design. So there were several calls to increase landscape buffering standards between different land uses. And this was specifically called out as a potential solution to improving the aesthetic along US 31, increasing zoning enforcement of existing zoning ordinances, and then adopting a couple new ordinances, the local wetland ordinance and then also the tree ordinance that is in development. Limit intensity of land uses in environmentally sensitive areas, and then communicating with property owners, residents, realtors, and contractors around township land use regulations. So this particularly came up in the natural resources focus group, where folks identified that they didn't feel like homeowners generally and realtors generally and contractors generally had bad intentions, but maybe didn't have all the information they needed about what you can and what you cannot do on your property. And if there were an opportunity for the township to proactively communicate that via one-on-one communications or maybe via an event of some type, to just say, welcome to East Bay, we're so glad you're here in this pristine place, here's what you can do with your lakefront property, and here's what you cannot do, just as a way to get in front of folks who probably aren't trying to break the rules, but maybe just don't realize what those rules are. So that was something that came up out of the natural resources discussion. And then considering the preservation of development rights program as a possible tool to preserve agricultural lands came up as well. Any questions or comments on this list? Okay. And I think this is our last to-do list for you to consider. So related to economic development, folks called for, and I believe, Paul, you were at the table for this discussion. This came out of the business focus group, developing a brand for the township and really capitalizing on the many assets that you do have in East Bay and communicating that far and wide consistently. Being proactive in identifying what types of businesses you'd like here and how to attract them. And then along the line of what types of businesses are desired, folks identified, and this is something that I think you've talked about before, the development of that community center type location here at Hammond and 3 Mile, including a coffee shop, farmer's market, and then community space at the township offices. So a lot of interest in what this intersection could be for the township going forward. And then continuing to communicate with businesses about the available financial and technical assistance that's available to them. I'm not clear if that was something the township was doing prior to COVID, but definitely the township was doing that during COVID as those resources were available, and folks were very appreciative of that. So continuing that communication as you can with your capacity that you have was something folks wanted to see. Any questions about this list? Okay. Well, there's your to-do list
Yeah.
from your focus group constituents. So thanks again for letting me share that and for being involved in this project. It was a really fun opportunity to meet with so many residents and business owners and stakeholders in your township. You have a very engaged and informed population with a lot of ideas. I can say that sometimes doing projects like this, you don't come out of the project with a clear to-do list, and I feel like this one did, and that's really due to the folks who attended and shared some pretty strong ideas. So thank you very much for the opportunity, and I'm thrilled to take any questions you have or entertain any discussion, or I can just sit down and
Well, thank you for facilitating. I think you did a fine job in keeping people on track. And I know that, some groups were smaller than other groups, and so that's a dynamic that's always hard to deal with. And then via Zoom is also our phone or whatever. So you did a fine job. Thank you.
oh, thanks, Judy. Thanks for attending.
Yeah, I just want to underline the fact that in the survey that was sent out, we had a 12% return, which was excellent for any type of a survey of that nature. But sitting down and going through all that was a lot of work, so thank you.
Oh, you bet. And I think that was primarily Claire that worked through those responses. So you have a
Well,
great director of planning and zoning.
In both cases, thank you.
And I think it's really telling to have that many returns on a survey, and then when we add up all the people that actually came to focus groups, people gave their time and evenings, and I thank the public for turning out, because we can't do it alone. So thank you for facilitating too.
My pleasure. Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I unplug this while I cause a massive tech disruption.
Yes, the building will blow up.
Hey, don't be saying stuff.
End the meeting.
Moving on to Claire's part of the agenda, the master plan update. Would you like to go through this for us,
Sure.
with us?
This is kind of some of the denser pieces of the packet. You'll see on your tables, John Syke was unable to make it tonight, but he did send some correspondence through the packet. We had some kind of high-level thoughts about the action plan, as well as the Hammond corridor and US 31. So I thought that was helpful, insightful, and so I printed off copies for you all to review. So just this action plan, it's in very draft form right now, but I wanted to at least have the planning commission have something to take a look at, to respond to, as opposed to starting from a blank slate. So I went ahead and drafted the action plan. There's 6 different themes in here, so you'll see we've got natural resources, housing and neighborhoods, community facilities, economic development, farmland and agricultural preservation, and governance and regional cooperation. So we've got 6 different themes. They were informed by the 2015 master plan, so some of those actions that were included in there are very relevant. They haven't been completed yet. We're carrying them, I'm recommending carrying them through to this master plan update. We've got a lot in there that's informed by the community survey results. We've got a lot of items and actions that have been informed by the focus group results that you've just gone through. We have the Planning Commission and Board of Trustees Action Plan Survey. You'll see those results are included in your packet. Again, I used some of those results to help inform this action plan, as well as, you guys, I don't know if you recall, but you went through a visioning session in September of 2020. And then I think I spoke with Mindy separately after that. And so I've got the notes that I took from that visioning session, and I helped to craft the Our Vision piece of the action plan. And then you'll also see the 2020 data and trends. So that was part of the American Community Survey, Economic Survey, the Housing and Market Analysis. So that's a chapter that's been reviewed before. I didn't include it in your packet this time, but that's all available on the website for you to review, and it's helpful to kind of look at some of the changes in our housing and other trends over time. So this action plan, as I mentioned, it's meant to be a draft to work from, and I'm hoping that as much as possible as we can make this an implementable action plan. So I want it to be something that the township can realistically achieve over the next 5 years. So I want it to not be 15, 20 years out. I want it to be a 5-year master or action plan. I want it to be pretty specific in terms of priority level, partner agencies, funding opportunities. So once we really start to delve down into the details of some of the actions that are included here, I think then we'll put together an implementation framework that's pretty specific in guidance of what is the priority level, what are we going to do over the next few years, what's going to be pushed out, to 3 to 5 years, and then who's going to be responsible for implementing that. So I don't know do you want me to go through and read through the actual draft action plan? Do you guys want to just provide some feedback based on what you've read through? What is your preference for going through this tonight?
I don't think you need to read to us.
Okay.
I do have some comments, but Judy, do you want to go first?
Okay, well, thank you. Thank you for putting this together. I like the way that you grouped it into different categories to kind of following the focus groups and the survey, so I really appreciated that. I thought that giving us a visual of pictures in here. Yes, go ahead.
And
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry, I didn't
finish.
mention the second piece in there
Oh.
is kind of a vision for the S31 corridor
Mm-hmm.
in each district, as well as a vision for Hammond. I think that, and I think we talked a lot about these corridors and having, John Syke, I think, kept saying the importance of a vision and kind of images. So I was thinking that those components would probably be in like our economic development chapter under commercial corridors, nodes, something like that. But I was thinking it's a key to kind of the implementation. So I wanted to keep it all together for discussion tonight, but it's probably not going to be part of the action plan.
Okay. Well, just kind of taking it real quickly with each of the 6, I thought that I participated on the natural resources group. Elise said, counted that we had 21 people show up, which was huge, which really is very telling that people are concerned and interested about that. I thought that the actions coming out of this that are listed here, and she went through, are really spot on, and how important that is to, I think, our community in general. especially the overlay and trying to continue to review that and look at the loopholes, and we talked about some redefinitions, defining of things that will be coming up sooner even than the master plan. But I think that that's critical to our area, and people were very, very good about vocalizing what they thought, was important in the natural resource area. So I see that what's here is what we really talked about. And then housing, we all know that's really an ongoing thing, and as John pointed out last time, he's been working on that for 15 years, and, I think it will continue to be, but I thought moving, trying to keep the growth boundary and really defining that and using our sewer and water capabilities, et cetera, that's excellent. Community facilities, and Mindy can kind of speak to this when she served on the Parks District. I mean, I think, and I thank you, because you really got things going at Grace McDonald and doing things with playgrounds for kids, and it's, we can always improve, but I think we got the ball kind of rolling there. So I thank you for that. And I thank everybody in the audience for kind of giving feedback about our Butis 5 and helping us design that so the community can use it. But we're always looking to improve and add more recreational park space, and maybe collaborate with schools. Because, 9 months out of the year, some of their facilities are not used, and maybe we could collaborate with that and do stuff with youth, et cetera. So those are some things. Economic, I was a little, I have to tell you, and then maybe someone can chime in on this. When I saw two businesses or two owners showed up, I mean, I wish we could really get, I know they're busy people, and with the pandemic, it really threw them into, trying to keep their businesses open, but I really feel like I would really like to see more in the economic sector, some more feedback from those folks. I mean, I think these things are excellent, but I'm not sure we got a really good, do you think we got a really good scope?
I know that Elise followed up with a few
Okay.
individuals for interviews.
Okay.
And I also drew from some of the steering committee we had been working with US 31 business owners
Okay.
and managers, which we had a pretty good group throughout the winter that we were
Good.
working with.
Good, because I really think that's kind of the, a lot of those people a lot of people work very hard, their heart and soul, and they can really be instrumental in helping us with the beach district, and also expanding possibly to East Bay Corners, and, helping us make that happen if we can entice them. Farmland and ag, boy, we'd really like to keep some of those farms, and things like that, and that's huge to our area, because we know we depend on the agricultural. And I didn't know this, that, I just heard that in the news, that Michigan is number 3 in apple production in the U.S., and that's immense, that's awesome, so we'd like to keep those folks. And I think the idea of, Claire, I think Beth getting together with Chuck Korn, I think having a joint meeting again, because the last time we met with Garfield was 2015. I like that. I think it's really important for us to meet our neighbors and be a good neighborhood governance, and if we can work together and collaborate, I think we can make things happen. So yes, and thank you for the photos. That was very helpful of what things, could look like, or some tweaking of that really helped, I think. But yeah, those are highlights that I gleaned. So thank you. Paul?
Ditto.
Oh, God. Sorry, Paul.
Just a couple of things, and most of these actions are good. I always like to have good but measurable, and I think that we need to have something to measure them by, both by effect as well as time, when we hope to get these done. I think that having coordination among the other townships, especially on Hammond and other areas like in Traverse City area that fringes on it, I think that's going to be vital. So one of the action things would be actually to try and bring them all together on a somewhat quarterly basis at least, instead of just every 5 years. I mean, other than that, we just develop things in a silo fashion, and we don't know, what the other guy is thinking, let alone what the plans would be. But you do, in this, have some big ideas. And the big ideas that I pulled out of this was, first of all, broadband. Being able to put broadband in this area, I think would go a long way towards a lot of different development, both business-wise as well as good for the citizens. The other one is even a bigger thought, and that is burying the power lines, getting those power lines down. Nothing is more, what could I say, bringing you down feeling than these power lines. When they're gone, you feel like you're opened up. Certain developments we go into, they have power lines, they have one feel, certain don't, and it just has a whole different feeling. And then the other item is parks on the East Bay. We do a lot as far as the lake area. We have a lot of parks there. We have a couple of, I think, 1 or 2 parks, I believe, on East Bay. One, which is, you go right by and you don't really.
It's a parking lot with a bathroom.
It's a parking lot with a bathroom, yes.
On the bay.
On the bay. I think that, we have this, major asset, and we just don't utilize it for the public, as well as advertise it. The only other thing, just drilling down into little things, when we talk about doing a tree inventory along 31 Corridor, Hammond Corridor, and the Lakes area, does that include the private homes that are on 31? Because it seems to me, when we talk about 31, there's a certain thought that you go all the way to 3 Mile, and then you forget that East Bay continues on down for another mile or so on that Autobahn that we call. And there are a number of homes there. The trees are there. So I would assume that the inventory would be that also?
Yeah, so we've started the inventory, and that's using like LiDAR, which is
Okay.
kind of imagery to be able to, we worked with Leah, the GIS analyst there, as well as just a resident that was on the tree preservation subcommittee
Right.
with interest. And so we have mapped that corridor, and it's kind of a higher level map of kind of trying to identify the locations of where the heritage trees are. And so we had kind of a metric of 80 feet or a certain feet was a certain diameter, a certain age of white pines. But we were able to kind of get an idea of where the canopy was, and had a few different heights of trees that we were able to get a pretty good idea of. We don't have kind of and I don't know if this is necessary because I don't know what policies it will inform, but having some metrics that we can kind of track as over time, are we increasing the tree canopy? Are we improving the health of it, since a lot of our goals are tied to that? So kind of, do we need something a little bit more fine detail for?
Well, getting the people involved. It seems that, and again, I'm coming from my vantage point on 31 for the individual homeowners, just putting out a notice saying, tell us what you got, or getting them involved, thinking about the trees, because there are some people that walk up, I don't like that tree today, I don't want to pick up leaves anymore, down it goes. So, I mean, it's just something that, when you talk about inventory of trees, what exactly are we talking about? That's all. Other than that, as I say, just running through it real quick, because we'll probably get into this more in depth later. But I do think that those things are good points that were brought out here, points that we may start to think about. But again, I think coordination among the townships, actionable plans, time-wise as well as actual completion-wise, what we really mean when we say we want to do this, as opposed to some of these work with, farmers to farm. What does that mean?
Yeah, no, I
So-
appreciate that, and I think we can probably make some of this language a little more actionable as we refine it, but the final version of the action plan will be a table. So it'll be, each one of these will be listed with responsible party, time frame, funding mechanisms, partners, and so we'll come back to the planning commission and work with you to fill that out, priority level, so that we have more of like an implementation framework.
Yeah, it just seems that in the last, just in the last 2 years, the developments around here and a number of different things have accelerated. And I think this is a good time to start putting in that plan and then starting to think in terms of what we want. However, I do have one kind of chuckle. When I saw about the roundabouts, and they talked about the roundabouts, and all of a sudden I went, wait a minute, they're talking about a roundabout at 3 Mile and right over here. And I look at the picture and I'm saying, where are you going to put it? I mean, it's,
Yeah, I know that the road commission is evaluating feasibility right now of a roundabout, so it's not for sure that there'll be a roundabout, and a lot of what they're looking at is right of way and just the feasibility of putting.
Yeah,
It would be a
this-
2-lane roundabout, so
Uh-huh.
I think that they're still in that evaluation.
I'm sure Roy's General Store will love moving about 50 feet up back and, okay, that's all.
So with regards to the natural features inventory, we talked about this last time we did the master plan, and nobody could decide what natural features we were gonna inventory. And so I think that needs to be very specific here, because we struggled with what that meant, because it means different things to different people. So that was one of the comments there. With regards to the wellhead protection overlay district, we already have a wellhead protection plan. Have you seen that? I've seen it. Brian Sousa has it, so you might want to
Okay.
get that. We do have a wellhead protection, because when we talked about it when we did the auto owners and that diesel tank, so we did talk about it then. He actually showed it to me then.
And that would be, the wellhead protection overlay district would be taking kind of the map that's created by just that boundary and seeing if there's any type of regulations that we'd want, like higher level of protection.
Right, and I think that the state does a really good job in the wellhead protection zones to already regulate a lot of it, as long as it's followed, if you will. With regards to the housing and neighborhoods, one of the things that, as a township trustee, I think about is the emergency services and making sure that, as we look at changing our size of structures or whatever, we need to make sure that whatever we do makes good sense with the future plan and growth for both our township ambulance as well as Metro Fire. So I just want to make sure we have that on the radar. The community facilities thing that came up in the meeting was very interesting to me, because people wanted more like a civic center. They wanted a big sports complex where you could have everything at all the time. And I think we have that in the Civic Center already. That's not used as nearly as much as it can be used. So I hesitate with a lot of that because of the fact that we're not using the current ones that we have. But I would love to see in our zoning ordinance the additional pocket parks, that when we do a site condo, we do a subdivision, we do a PUD, that we are not using every single piece of land for homes or whatever, but that we are actually adding to the parks. And whether they give that park to the township or they just maintain the park, that doesn't really matter to me, but I would like to see them included in the plans. I was a force in getting the playgrounds at Grace McDonald Park, and I was also trying to get Jen's Park. Jen's Park pisses me off. And we did get a grant to put a ADA kayak ramp out into the bay, but because of what the water did, it just wasn't feasible. So, that park is a wonderful piece of property that we are not using to its fullest. We have had, homeless people living in the bathroom because there's a heater in there at night, We've tried to do all these kind of things to prevent stuff like that, but right now we have a really great parking lot and bathroom on the bay. And that's not one of the places people are going to go to the bay. So, that is something I would love to see bettered, but that's not the right term, but you get my drift of what I'm thinking. And
Mindy, just one point on that, and I'd be curious on your input. We put in a grant application to USDA. It was about $100,000 for planning along the US 31 corridor, and a big component of it was public access to the water. So just trying to take a look at the existing sites, improving them, acquisition of new sites, partnerships with road ends, and just kind of really focusing on accessing the water and then also bringing boaters and stuff into the township. I think that there's some other funding opportunities where we might be able to explore that really would focus on like public access to the water. One is like the Coastal Resiliency Coastal Zone Management Program, looks at resiliency and public access and water. So I think that there's some opportunities if the township's interested in exploring some grant funding that could really help us plan for water access along that corridor.
I would love to see more, water access, I know
Yeah, I was
that.
wondering if you just cut a deal with the state on the state park that's there.
Yeah, work with them on some
Yeah.
improvements. And
Yeah, it's, there was one item, sorry, I interrupted you, go ahead.
Go ahead, you're on a roll.
Well, no, the other item that I saw that I think is something that we need to seriously look at, and that is some control around the septic systems, some management of them, some control on them, and certainly some requirements that when at minimum the property transfers, that there needs to be some review and some type of basically sign off on the septic system that is appropriate.
Yeah, that should have been in our natural resources, and was it not in there?
Oh, it was there, because I know I picked
Right,
up on it.
yeah, we did talk about that, I believe.
But yeah, I think drilling into specifically what the policy tool is. There's a number of townships in Michigan that have the point of sale ordinance. But just
Yeah, at least
making sure
that.
what that policy looks like.
As well as hooking up at point of sale to water lines if the water lines are extended.
Yeah, that would be nice.
With regards to the state park, it is my belief that that intersection, the entrance to the park needs to be moved over to the light. It's gonna help pedestrians. It's certainly gonna help anyone who's trying to turn left out of there. It's,
We move over the 3 Mile light?
Yeah, one, you've had
Oof, yeah.
somebody killed there, and number two, you have this big, like telephone pole, utility pole, that's broken in half and being held up by the other pole. So, it's one where you make a wide turn, so it is an interesting turn, and you come right out, and somebody's coming out of the park, and it's sort of like, hello, and then 99% of the time, they're not from here, so they're looking one way, oh, it's a mess.
and there's people crossing the street at the same time.
Exactly,
And I
exactly.
know it's part of their long-range plan, the park, but I think that if we could coordinate with them on that.
I think that would be a great one. And I know that they've been talking about buying both that property to the west as well as something to get out onto 3. And if we could work with them on that, I think that would be a good thing.
Yeah, we've put them in touch with some of the property owners of that site next to Hampton, and they haven't been able to reach a deal, but I know that they're interested in that site and communication with the owner.
So, okay. With regards to purchasing of development rights and transfer of development rights, we've been doing that, but we've been doing that in association with like the Woodland Preserve and that kind of thing. Are you thinking going alone, or are you going with the Conservancy here? Or am I thinking-
There's different models, there's Peninsula Township is one example, Acme Township, of an actual purchase of development rights program where they're, and so that would be something that, to explore if there was support from the township for that. But I think that certainly there's other opportunities to not have an ordinance in place or not have it be tied to a millage, but continuing to partner with the Conservancy and looking at properties that come up and being proactive in terms of what are the high priority properties for conservation, whether it's farmland or other conservation.
Okay, that was one of my questions. And with regards to this action item on governance and regional cooperation, it just kind of hits me with what happened at the township board meeting with the ambulance. I don't know if everybody knows, but Acme Township came to East Bay Township and asked us to serve them with ambulance service. And we had Nick and Beth spent a long time to figure out if we could do it and how we could do it and what were the benefits to East Bay Township residents, what were the negatives, and the township board turned it down. So, we don't have that spirit of cooperation that we're looking for, so I don't know how well it's gonna go over at the township level. But on the flip side, we did the sewer project last year. We've done a whole lot of good too, so. Did you get enough feedback?
Hey, Mindy, I think your idea about pocket parks, that may attract younger families or younger folks then too, to a housing development and help us in that range, because maybe that's a deterrent. I mean, if you have kids and stuff, it's really nice to have like a little place where your kids can play in apartments and things like that, if, because housing is expensive and people might be renting.
Yeah, and I think that's a great idea to tie it into the ordinance, because the last few, preliminary site plans I've taken a look at do have some park components in them, but it's not anything we require, and there's no consistency in it. And one thing that was brought up by a lot of residents around Elmbrook, and just kind of identifying the fact that there's really not many parks in that area. There's a lot of parks in the lakes area and some kind of more closer to town, but just taking a look township-wide and where our population is. And so I think that that's a great strategy for getting some
Yeah, I do
additional
too.
amenities.
We really only have one pocket park.
Pine Grove?
Yeah.
And if we could collaborate, especially up here with the schools, since they only function,
Yeah.
9-10 months out of the year right now, that would be key, rather than building new
We get some of
facilities.
this funding, it'll be trails taking
Yeah.
residents to those playgrounds.
Yeah.
and those things.
That would be cool.
Just not parks, we talk about branding and setting a tone for, the beach area, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know, is it possible down the road in our ordinances that we determined that we want to have a certain look as far as the architectural look. So when somebody's going to build, it's going to have a uniformity rather than having up, down, small type of look. Because it just seems that if we want to have a theme for the place, we should probably have a look for the place too.
I think,
And there's a few
Yeah.
examples on page 46 in your packet of just some, some communities, instead of doing like a form-based code,
Yeah.
they do some design standards of facade, maybe there's certain percentage of windows that need to be.
Right, we have something that on the, in the airport.
We have it in the
Right.
airport and a little bit in East Bay Corners on some commercial uses. But
Right.
the airport has quite a bit of design standards.
Yeah, so
I think-
I'm just saying that we have some type of attempt at uniformity, so we have a look as being the beach community.
Beth, I think, and Chuck, Korn kind of addressed that a little bit in their memo, or who, I don't know who did, like page 13 and 14 and stuff, they kind of talked, yeah, that was them.
I think
And-
it's to them.
Oh, to them, I'm sorry, my bad. I'm trying to take notes and then I'm not a very good listener, I guess, tonight. And so I think there are some things we could do that wouldn't be, that would give some latitude, but yet, make it some architecturally pleasing or whatever. Like no chain linked coated fences or something, stuff like that. I mean, there's little things we can do, like you said, windows, roof lines, all kinds of cool stuff. So thanks for those are all real good points.
Did you get enough from us?
Yeah, I think this was really helpful. We'll probably do another session on this just when we have a full planning commission, and I'll take this and kind of format it into a table, and I'll probably send out a survey where you guys can start to prioritize these and start to put it into the implementation framework. So this is helpful.
Do we want to have a limit of how many bullets are in each?
I
Action.
think that we might want to reduce the number of bullets, and I think that we'll do that through the prioritization process, because I do think that less is more, especially if we're trying. We might not bury the utility lines in 5 years.
Right.
But I think we really do want to try to get as much of this done.
We can put a goal of 20%,
Yeah.
or something,
Yeah,
start it at least.
Yeah.
as far as bullets, more than 2, less than 6.
So who do we have, do we have some power and light? No, right? Just Cherryland
DC Light and Power and Consumers
and Cherryland?
on US 31.
Yeah, okay, so
I
we,
don't think there's Cherryland.
right. Oh, so you're talking about burying power lines there as opposed to,
Period.
yeah, so we have 3
Period.
companies that we,
I have communicated, both TC Light and Power and Consumers. And we've been kind of I've been working with them on the light pole banners and
Yeah.
getting those approvals and stuff, so.
Where are we gonna put our light poles if we bury everything though? Or our banners when we bury
We'll put the
everything?
banners on the light poles and then we'll bury everything.
keep the poles, right? No, that's not.
Have a fleet of drones.
We don't need, we don't need signage all over. Good enough.
All right, so, this is the time and place for the public comment for anything that was on the agenda. If you'd like to make a comment, please come up to the lectern, state your name and address, and we'll be happy to hear from you.
What if it is also, was also on the agenda? Comment?
Yeah, go ahead.
They can
I'll move that court before you sit on trip.
Thank you. So we can still comment if it was on the agenda?
Did I state not on the agenda? This is the time for what was on the agenda. Did I misspoke? I'm sorry.
We'll
I was
listen.
really confused.
I'm sorry.
I purposely waited. good evening, everybody, and boy, phew, you've done a lot of work, and thanks for your work, all of you, and your input. Especially thanks for doing the survey and the focus group for the master plan.
I need your name, and I know that you don't like to give your address, so could you just say that what residence you are?
East Township resident.
Thank you.
And as a resident and as a riparian, a couple of things in this evening's discussion and the packet jumped out at me. And so I just wanted to comment at that and then give a couple of other ideas. One is that one of your goals was to increase access to inland lakes for kayakers and other boaters, maybe canoers, but mostly kayakers. And as you folks move ahead and think about that, I really urge you to consider the impacts of that. Kayaking has really increased in interest. It's a great sport, great recreation, but the increase in aquatic invasive species is just tremendous throughout the state, and especially in our area. With the New Zealand mud snails, the tiny little things in the Boardman River, they just look like specks of dirt, and they can easily be transported in kayaks. And with the very invasive Eurasian milfoil, just need a little piece of that plant on your canoe or your shoes. So if you increase the access to our inland lakes and the streams, that could make an impact on the spread of aquatic invasive species. And right now, the way the state is dealing with it is that, and the local municipalities, is that the property owners are the ones that end up paying either individually or collectively through the SADs or special assessment districts. So please just consider the domino effect when you make these decisions.
And I don't think that was in our action plan.
Maybe it was in,
on the screen.
so maybe I misspoke, but it was in tonight. And then another thing is, and maybe it was in her presentation again, that's working and not working. I encourage you to continue to work on that tree ordinance, and sometimes when it's talked about, it's only talked about in terms of the white pines and only the white pines on 31, and please, when you consider that or move forward with that, please remember what's happened with our elms and what's happened with our ashes. And if you only focus on preserving the white pines, then what happens if something comes along and gets our white pines? I mean, so I think all of our trees are important. And then what's working and not working, the citizens seem to be saying that they really think the Forest Lakes overlay is really, really good that we have in our township, but the enforcement isn't there. And for me, as a riparian, recently with the request to amend the Forest Lakes overlay by allowing a permeable surface of 200 square feet within the 50 feet of the shoreline is really disconcerting. And instead, I urge you folks to, as you move forward and look at that, to, oh boy, really look at the Forest Lakes overlay and strengthen it. And it's my understanding that the township's goal is to work on updating the master plan and then looking at the ordinances so that they match each other. But gosh, in case of the forest overlay, if we do that system or procedure of looking at updating the master plan and then looking at the ordinance, it feels like, oh my gosh, are more people going to come in and ask for amendments to the Forest Lakes overlay? And it's just really scary to me. And I hope that, or not hope, but I hope you folks would consider maybe some things, some ordinances need to be looked at even before the master plan is done. So those are just a couple of suggestions. And remember that buffer, those first 50 feet of the shoreline are just so important to water quality. And without water quality, then our property values go down, and we don't have the recreation, and we don't have that up north love that, or nor feel or recreation that all of those people said they like and appreciate about East Bay. So those are some things to consider. On a whole nother note, here's two other things that came to my mind and that I did share in the surveys is in that when you think about the architecture, I understand that some communities have, there's some technical term for it, but the same appearance. I don't know what I know you talked about that already, but there's a certain thing to it. But the term that kept coming up in the surveys, at least when I read it, was that up north feel. And so I encourage you to think about, well, what does an up north appearance look like, and how would that fit into 31 in East Bay Township or Hammond? And then lastly, this is really out of context for this, but not out of context, but nothing that I've seen. In East Bay Township, there's the train track along 31, and I'm really environmentally conscious, but and this might fit in, and some people might think it not, but I wonder, gosh, what would it be like if there was an energy-efficient train, at least in the good seasons of the year, good weather-wise, that went from, say, Acme through East Bay Township all the way to Traverse City. You'd have to communicate and work together, all these different communities. And how would that move people? How would that move tourists from Traverse City or East Bay to the other places and benefit everybody along the way? How would that move us as the citizens if we wanted to go downtown for an appointment or to a restaurant? Or could that even be a source of commuting for citizens? And then how would could that impact or decrease the traffic on 31? So it's just an idea. So seriously, thank you for all the work you do. We know it's more than what we see.
Thank you.
Can I comment on one thing, or no? You know, they used to have the dinner train thing, and that was kind of cool, but I was out walking the Tart Trail, and they're working on, is that the train track that they're thinking about using for the Ann Arbor to?
Yes.
Yeah, because they're pulling up ties and
Well, the train
re-graveling.
still goes to the lumber yard.
Yeah,
They're upgrading it.
yeah, they are.
Um,
So,
increasing speed.
yeah, so it's realistic that something could happen in the near future, eh? Thank you.
Is there anybody, public comment is still open. Come on up if you'd like to speak.
Judy Pelto, East Bay Township, Abbey Lane. And I would like also to thank all the hard work. I really enjoyed and appreciated the attempt to really get the community involved in the master plan, especially with the survey and the focus groups. I was very happy to see that come about. I have a couple things I wanted to bring up. You were talking about Acme Township, and I just wanted to emphasize how they worked to make the access to East Bay by, purchasing up old hotels, and I don't know financially how they did that. I'm sure there were grants involved or whatever, but I mean, it took a while, but if you've ever been to that park, it's continually expanded. And it's a very nice area. And I think, if the township could consider something like that, I don't know if it's feasible financially, but there have to be grants, there have to be ways to get money for that. And also, probably, you would find a lot of support within the community to do that. So there could be fundraising. I think they did that in Acme at one point for a part of it. So I would like to see something like that, because I think it's a missed opportunity, a really big missed opportunity. Also, if I'm not mistaken, Acme probably has done more than, other than maybe Peninsula Township, to preserve their agricultural areas. And from the future land use map, it seems as though there's really a fairly large reduction in the agricultural areas. So I think that is an important part of what people talked about in some cases about East Bay that they particularly enjoy. So I would like you to think about that. And I know also that in the packet, there's a lot of talk about, which I'm glad to hear, about protecting the water, about protecting Mitchell Creek and the streams that access Mitchell Creek. However, there's nothing specific, and I guess that's what you were talking to, about how you're going to do that, how you're going to enforce that, because it's not always enforced now. And I think one thing I would really like to see is that there should be bigger setbacks from the wetlands when you're having development. If you look at Alta Vista up here, you can see why that might be a good thing to require. So at least I think the setbacks now are 50 feet. I'm not sure if that's correct, but I think that's something like that. And so there should probably be more than 100 feet setback from whether it's the stream, from whether it's wetlands, whatever it is. But if East Bay, if what the people are saying is that one of the big draws for East Bay, and it was for us as well, is the environmental aspect of East Bay Township, the trees, the water, the fact that East Bay it has that up north feel. Traverse City doesn't have that anymore. So I think that whatever you can do or you're able to do to protect, again, the wetlands, that's really very important. And finally, I wanted to say, and it wasn't really part of, I guess it was, it ties in on the future land use map. And I understand that probably the way this was drawn up, based around Hammond Road and the commercial areas, that you just wanted to make kind of nice even squares. I don't know what to say when you cut this up, like a nice pie. But I brought this up at another meeting, and I want to bring it up again, that everything south of Wilsey Road is considered residential low density, except when it hits 4 Mile Road, and then it becomes medium to high density. And that makes no sense if you know that area. If you would just take a drive down 4 Mile Road, and go south past Wilsey Road, you'll see that that's an area that really needs to be preserved. I mean, there's a lot of forested area there. When you get to the bottom where it dead ends, it's all forest. There's 10 acres there that can never be developed. So, and you have to look at it geographically. I don't know a developer that would want to take on a project like that if you go there and look. So I would encourage you to think about that and to try to save as much of that look that we can in this township, because if it's too developed, it's not going to be what people moved here for. And as far as tiny homes, there are communities of tiny homes. Now, I think they're mostly on the West Coast, but, you know, and they're intergenerational, which I thought was really a nice concept. So there's smaller homes for single people, you know, young married people, maybe with just one kid, or retirees that are downsizing. And I like the idea of intergenerational. And one of the things they make very clear with some of these tiny developments is that they have front porches and they have sidewalks. And if you have that, you have community. Because people sit on their front porches and not behind big screens, and you talk to your neighbors. When I lived downstate, that's what we did. And you knew your neighbors because they'd be walking by, you'd be sitting on the porch, and you know, somebody'd strike up a conversation about, you know, your garden or whatever. So I think it's a good option. I think you can live in less than 750 square feet if you're single, if you're retired, and you've had your fill of big homes and cleaning them and doing everything else that you have to do to take care of them. So I really would like to see that concept. And I think it was the Chair Tubbs that mentioned about this idea that he had, and I don't remember what it's called, for the big development of kind of its self-contained community where you have housing and maybe you have some coffee shops and you have a green space or like a big park for a meeting area. And I think for large parcels of land on Hammond Road, you might be able to, that might work, and you could have the commercial areas ring the major highway and move back and have your developments. So, but I'm really excited about everything I've heard. I think that Claire's been great help, and all of you have put in a lot of time and really had thoughtful meetings and been very patient with everybody that wants to speak, so thank you for that. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Ralph Bednarz. I reside at 1380 Autumn Trail on Rainy Lake. I want to thank all the commissioners for listening to my comments tonight and during the previous planning commission meetings about the importance of protecting the unique lakes of Forest Lakes District. Being a lakefront property owner of Rainy Lake and retired limnologist from the state of Michigan, I have a unique perspective of lake ecology and the importance of protecting lakes, of protective lakes management in the Forest Lakes District. Tonight I want to comment about the 2021 Master Plan update, specifically the draft vision, policies, and action statements. The vision must not be obscured by diminishing a top priority of the community, protecting the lakes, streams, and natural areas within the township. The second sentence of the draft vision statement reads, "Inland lakes, the East Bay shoreline, streams and tributaries, and sensitive wetlands will be protected and enhanced through creative development tools and natural features preservation practices." I question the meaning of creative development tools and natural feature preservation practices. What are these creative development tools and practices? In the draft Natural Resources Policy Statement, Actions Bullet 4 states, update and amend the Forest Lakes Overlay District Ordinance to make it more user-friendly and enhance desired protections in the 50-foot setback area. I support cleaning up the vague language and strengthening the protections in the ordinance, but I question the meaning of make it more user-friendly. Does this mean soften the protections, such as the proposed zoning amendment number 3-21, permeable patios in the Forest Lakes Overlay District? I urge you to stay away from the vague language in these documents. Thank you for your appreciation of my comments, and thank you for your services to East Bay Township and the residents.
Thank you. Last call, is there anybody else who wants to make a public comment? Okay, I will close the public hearing. Okay, no, comment? It's not the hearing, it's comment. And the next planning commission is September 7th, 2021, the day after Labor Day, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.